Hello and welcome to Character Corner, the show where we talk about all the potential newcomers from each series of Super Smash Bros. Today joining me is Spazzy D.
Hey guys.
And we're going to be talking about Kid Icarus. So this is one of the Famicom 4, the brother series or sister series to Metroid. And yeah, it had a big NES title and then a much smaller Game Boy one. And then disappeared for about a good 20 years, maybe. And then Uprising came out, done by Sakurai himself, the creator of Super Smash Bros., which of course led to Kid Icarus getting quite a lot of representation in the last Smash game, arguably more than it should. It got a new character, which everyone expected in Palutena, but then it also got a clone character in Dark Pit, which is very a controversial character,
to say the least.
And then this on the 3DS version, because they could just port all the data over, there's a ton of Kid Icarus enemies and trophies and items, and there's like 2 assist trophies as well for Kid Icarus. Like it got quite a boost in content in Smash 4.
The Smash Run enemies alone are ridiculous, just the number of them. But I think a lot of that, especially on the 3DS, had to do with the fact that, not to get too off topic, that it was easy for Sakurai to port. He had all of the assets already, so he's like, well, let's make a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So, a lot of people, though, despite all this content in Smash 4, do like Kid Icarus and want to see it get even more content. And while we're not necessarily sure this will happen without a new game, we're going to talk about all the popular and most likely picks and how they might play and what their chances are and all that jazz.
For the record, I am one of those people. I remember when Melee came out, I'm all like, there were 2 characters. I'm like, where's Pit and where's Little Mac? Because I grew up on the NES, and I'm all like, these are like classic Nintendo characters. And very happy to see them. I was also a big fan of Uprising, so I mean, I don't want to.
I like Kid Icarus as well. I think like other media, it could really shine, like an anime or something like that. And I think it's one of those series that has quite a bit of potential, and I'd love to see it grow. I'd love to see it get a new game, and if it did get a new character in Smash, I mean, I would be a-okay with that. But I feel like maybe if, I don't know, Dark Pit gets cut, it could get a newcomer instead or something. I don't know.
I wouldn't mind.
I actually like Dark Pit. I prefer him to regular Pit, in fact.
I wouldn't mind, depending on how other series are, because, like, you know, it's one of those things where at this point, like, if we get 2 new Kid Icarus characters with no cuts, and then, like, no new, let's say, Donkey Kong or Zelda rep, it's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, I get that. It's considering it's such a smaller series, like, it's really hard to try and defend against, you know, claims of bias and all that when that's happening, especially if Sakurai makes another Kid Icarus on, like... Oh well, we'll see.
Yeah,
and,
we don't. Unfortunately, we don't live in the greatest timeline where Super Kid Icarus came out on the Super Nintendo and led to a renaissance of the franchise. Anyways,
anyways, let's start off with I guess there's a lot of argument over which pick is the most likely pick, and I think it comes down to 3. So I'm just going to go in my own personal order of preference. And that means the first one we're starting with is Medusa, the main villain of the original Kid Icarus and one of the recurring villains of Uprising.
Right. She's actually my number 1 most wanted. We'll talk about it. Like, we're going to talk about it. There's 3 that I think all would deserve it in one way or another and are great characters, and I wouldn't mind if it's any one of these 3. But Medusa first of all, she's, you know, she's the original antagonist. She's the, you know, she's the King Day. She's been there since the beginning. She's a great counter to Palutena. In fact, I feel like she could almost be like a thematic clone in that they have, their A moves will be different and their specials will be different, but they'll function in a similar way, you know?
Yeah, well, that's always something I thought, that if they were to cut Palutena in the next game, they could add Medusa instead as a newcomer, because it kind of works. They are both very similar. Palutena's the goddess of light and Medusa's the goddess of darkness, so they are literally clashes and counters to each other. And I think they both use a staff and all that, but they're also not, you know, identical. Like,
right.
I mean, Palutena, they gave her a bunch of skills that Pit could use in the multiplayer mode. But Medusa has all of her own powers. She's got her snake abilities, and she can turn people to stone and various other dark magic attacks from all of her, like the first game, the Uprising boss fights, and even those short anime clips all have stuff that can be taken for Medusa.
Right, like they wouldn't even work as direct clones, I think, just because I believe Medusa's left-handed and Palutena's right-handed, even though they both have staffs. Like, because they're supposed to mirror each other, like it's like a thing.
Yeah. Well, I would like to see Medusa.
Medusa uses the left, or evil hand. So if you're left-handed out there...
Everyone knows that's the evilest of hands. But I like Medusa, and I feel like you're right. She's like the King Dedede of things. I think no matter what Kid Icarus game they make, Medusa's probably going to always appear. A lot of people argue that because her role got kind of downgraded a bit in Uprising, that she's no longer important. And I would personally, obviously, disagree with that.
Yeah,
she's always going to be the early villain, or she's either going to be the main villain or the early villain of almost. Right,
or she'll have a part in it. It's like, okay, we've had 3 Thor movies. Loki was only technically the main villain in the first one. He's still, I think, the main Thor villain, right? It's Loki.
Yeah, people still think of him as the main antagonist of it, because he's kind of the rival character to Thor, isn't he?
Right.
And Medusa being the rival character to Pit kind of works like that.
Right, or at least to Palutena. Yeah, and
Palutena even. That's what I meant.
Yeah, and I get it. I get how really she's kind of written out in chapter. It's been years since I played the game, like chapter 13 or whatever it is, like a third of the way through the game, it's done.
Yeah, the first arc of the story finishes on chapter 10, where you fight her, and then she's gone up until the final chapter.
Right, but then she does come back. She plays I won't say a pivotal role, but a pretty big role in the final battle. I mean,
she saves Pit.
Yeah,
ironically, because she expresses that she's really annoyed by our next pick, and it literally attacks him. And then he attacks her back, and then that's the last we see of her. But I mean, there's potential there to set up for her to even have her own sort of faction, if that works in some way, or she just kind of sticks with him. Which I guess we'll. Do you have any more comments to talk about Medusa, or we'll move on to this guy?
I mean, I guess that's it. She's awesome. She also has a great alternate form for Final Smash. Her monster form. She can be unique. She's cool. She's both female and a villain, which are both things that I want more of in Smash.
I agree. That should be the first female villain, I think, in Smash.
Yep.
If she got in.
So
she might be the goddess of darkness, but she's not the leader of the underworld.
No.
That honor goes to the guy who completely usurped her in Uprising and claims to be the guy behind the whole series of all of the bad things that happen, and that's Hades, the god of the underworld. So Hades is a very popular character because he's sarcastic and smarmy and doesn't take things seriously up until the very final fight with Pit, where he realizes that he might just lose this. And I can understand why people like Hades. He's a very enjoyable character. He was definitely a very good villain and counter to the Pit and Palutena's slightly more righteous ways.
Right, and I know some people will be like, he's always giant, but I mean, all of the gods in the series have the ability to appear giant and to appear mortal size, so I don't think that's real issue,
really. Because, I mean, Medusa was giant as well, and Palutena can be, and they can shrink down. The only thing I've got is, I mean, ironically, because of Hades' stature and stuff like that, I think he'd make a very good Ganondorf clone.
You know what's funny? I definitely brought that up before, that he makes more sense with that moveset anyway. He makes more sense than Black Shadow, I think, even, because...
Yeah, I agree, because he actually has dark magic and all of that stuff, and he actually does punch and kick Pit around when he's fighting him in his boss fight and all that.
Yeah.
He also has the added thing of lasers, and does he shoot beams from his eyes and mouth at one point?
I think so. I know he has lasers. It's like we probably should have watched some boss fights before we did
Like,
this video.
The key things I remember from him, apart from his whole attitude and personality, and that he can grow giant, is that you go inside him at one point and you fight his heart.
Right.
And I don't think they would utilize that in Smash somehow, because it might be a bit awkward if he rips out his heart and it attacks you.
I mean, his final Smash would definitely be, giant in the background doing attacks to people in the foreground.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
But yeah,
he can even go into that other form he has at the final boss, although he kind of goes into that form because Medusa punches his head off.
Yeah, I mean, he has a lot of magic. Like, there's a lot of lasers. I don't know. I'm looking at the Kid Icarus wiki right now. Tornadoes fire off powerful blasts of energy from different points of his body, like his hands and eyes. So yeah, he does have eye lasers.
Yeah. So I think that's how you would kind of he'd have to be a big, bulky character, but with range attacks and magic and stuff like that. And I think it would all really work to make him more unique. If he was going to go that route. Like, that's something I think Pig Ganon could also be.
Right.
A big, heavy character who uses magic and range attacks. Because we don't really have that in Smash. Most of the heavy characters are all, like, close range and stuff. I think the furthest is DDD, who has a projectile attack.
Right.
Bowser and DK are all super close and physical.
Yeah, you make him a literal tank. He just sits there shooting bullets at you.
Yeah. I think that could be a good way to make Hades unique.
Yeah,
and
big
I know a
image
lot
for
of people would like him. Although I prefer any of the Kid Icarus characters to have their kind of guidance conversations, like with what Pit and Palutena do in on the level. And I think Hades. I mean, there are fan-made versions of Hades guidance. I think they call it.
Right, and he would also, once again, while not filling the female role, I think fill the villain role, which I think is actually a bigger need in Smash right now because, I mean, we lost Wolf, who is anti-hero. I'm not an anti-hero, but he's not a full villain, I'll say that. But he still counts for villains.
Yeah,
but
I mean, he's in that part that, like, Wario's in.
Yeah.
King Dedede, because King Dedede, or Meta Knight, actually. Meta Knight might be a better...
he's like between...
yeah, Meta
he's
Knight's
between
like,
Meta Knight and
villain.
Dedede.
Yeah, yeah. He's slightly more evil than Meta Knight, but he's not like... Well, I mean, King Dedede's not exactly evil either. He's still a baddie. He's a baddie in most games, so that's good enough.
Right, did we get any villains in Smash 4? I know we did.
Pit?
Dark Pit, I guess.
I mean, he's technically he only plays him once, and you fight against him for most of the game.
Right. So I mean, we still don't have very many villains in
we don't.
in Smash, and people like playing as villains, and it's fun.
This is the opportunity to play as the villains. I think that's a big part of it, and I think having the opportunity to play as Hades, this is probably the best chance we're going to get. We're not exactly getting a Kid Icarus cart or anything like that anytime soon.
I mean, no, but if you want, when we're done here, we'll record another discussion about Kid Icarus cart. I think that's what everybody's waiting to hear.
We'll see if that's what people want to hear.
Right.
Right. So, interestingly, you talked about, representation of women and representation of villains in Smash. Because we've talked about a female villain and we've talked about a regular villain. So let's talk about a female character. And that is the goddess of nature, Meridi, who is a very popular character, despite being the only one kind of on our list that you don't fight or control or ever. She's only like an NPC character. Originally starts off as a kind of villain for a bit. You fight some of her troops, but then she very quickly joins your side, and then is just on your side for the whole thing, pretty much.
I mean, she has a great presence, both in... actually, she's on both Kid Icarus stages, isn't she? She's the only one, because she's on Reset Bomb Factory, and then she's on some of the guidances in Palutena's Temple.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, she cameos in both stages.
Right, and she has...
Skyward is the only one she doesn't cameo.
And she has a costume, which is something that you should actually probably think about, because I feel like characters that got costumes are ones that Nintendo are thinking of for some sort of role. Not necessarily, a playable role in Smash, but she's very popular.
Yeah, well, I think that's why. Like, along with like Ashley from WarioWare, they're very popular characters, and I think that's why a Mii fighter, at least for that point, fit her. And I'm not 100% sure if she would get the playable role, which I know will disappoint some of our fans out there who are big fans of Meridi. And my only reason for that is because she hasn't ever really had a kind of role where she fights anyone or anything like that. All she's done is drop bombs on people.
Right, but she is a goddess of nature, so she could have a lot of kind of plant and nature and earth-based magic.
Oh, yeah. You could definitely give her a moveset.
Right, I mean, we have no plant-based attacks at all now that Ivysaur
No, that's true.
is gone, and there's no other characters that could possibly do earth and plant-based magic. Isaac, so might as well be Viridian. But
yeah, my only issue against Viridian, my only point against her, is that I do think if they were to pick a new Kid Icarus character, Medusa and Hades have the bigger shot.
Right.
Because they're more the villains, whereas Viridian is kind of a secondary ally. Like,
yeah, she's not a very big character. It's,
No, she's the Palutena replacement for the storyline where Palutena goes missing. And
right.
She's also a somewhat of a villain for the second arc, where you just fight all of her troops. And although she does eventually adopt Dark Pit, and Dark Pit now works for her, which means she's definitely going to be coming back. I don't think where we were talking about while we think Medusa will probably come back in every game, there is this tiny bit of doubt, but I have a feeling that Viridian definitely will come back in every game, because I feel like Dark Pit will come back in every game.
Although we should mention that Medusa was not in the second game, the Game Boy game. But
yeah, that's true.
Anyways,
the second game doesn't have anyone really. It has Palutena and Pit, and then everything else is kind of.
The second game doesn't count for anything.
Yeah, it didn't get released in Japan, so as far as Sakurai might be aware, he might not even know about it. Although I doubt that.
Yeah, I like Viridian. She here's the thing. Almost all of the characters in Uprising have fun personalities. Mm-hmm. Hers was really good. She's got a great design. She's a staff user. She would use a lot of nature magic. She could be a unique character. I would like to see her in. I just would want one of the two villains in before.
Yeah, no, I agree. So those are the top 3 characters that we think. There was one character who was really popular on the hype for Smash 4, and that was Magnus from Kid Icarus Uprising. He's essentially, without saying it, the Hercules, Odysseus, Achilles, kind of he's the human hero who is so strong that he can fight off demons and go against gods. His name Magnus means the greatest. And he's also got the honour of being one of the few characters in the series who is actually playable, alongside Pit and Dark Pit.
He also is a dude with a giant sword.
Well, that's the issue. I mean, the game calls it a club and not a sword. It actually falls under the club category, and you can unlock it to use. So there is a way to differentiate him. But throughout the whole build-up, I was kind of like, well, we already kind of have Ike, and now we have Cloud as well. And they're dudes with big weapons that are the size of them, and Magnus just kind of falls into that category. He obviously appeared as a Sis trophy, where he runs around and swings his club, and I feel like that's probably the best spot for him. Not that he can't... he could definitely get a moveset, and you could utilize all the stuff that clubs can do. They can create little tornadoes when they swing, because we have that item that does that in Smash 4 already. Magnus could kind of adopt it, but...
He's not unique enough, I don't think.
Yeah, he doesn't have... He's just this really cool guy who shows up, and he just became really popular because of that. I mean, he had build-up before the game as well, unlike, say, Viridian, who I don't think was revealed before the game. And say Hades wasn't revealed before the game either. But Magnus was, because he appears in the second level.
Right. And those were actually my least favorite parts of the game. I feel like were the extended areas where you're playing as him, and I'm all like, I just want to get back to the flying parts. It's the only part of this game that I like. Get back to the flying part.
See, I appreciated being able to play as Magnus, because it kind of you spend 16 chapters playing as Pit.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you begin a chapter where you're playing as a dog, and then a little girl. No, you're playing as a little girl, and then out of nowhere, and then you're playing as a dog, and then you suddenly become Magnus.
Yeah.
You hadn't seen in ages, and you're wondering, oh, where is he? I feel like he needs to come back, and then boom, you are him, and it's like, what the heck? That's amazing. I think that's kind of why he became really popular, even though it's sort of half a mission you use him on.
Yeah, he's really only one of the... I mean, the only characters you play as in the game are Pit, Dark Pit, and Magnus, right?
Yeah.
So he's and two of those characters are already in Smash Brothers.
Right. That's the thing. The only thing the major thing going against him is he's a bit too similar to other characters, and just like we said with Faridi, there are other characters who kind of deserve it a bit more and are probably more unique to add.
Right. If there was ever a Kid Icarus fighting game, he would be a top 10 character for sure.
Oh yeah, Kid Icarus Warriors. We could definitely see him show up. He would be perfect for that kind of game.
Yeah, and he's one of those. It's one of those things where, yeah, if we just start adding a bunch of characters from Kid Icarus, eventually we'll get to Magnus. I just feel like there's characters that are A, more important, B, more visually striking, and C, add more to the game, whether it be unique move list potential, visuals, a role such as villain. Magnus doesn't really do any of that. I don't have anything against Magnus. I just think there's better options.
Yeah, agreed. So those are the four main ones we had on our list. But I thought we'd do two editor's choice.
All right.
Characters that probably don't have any kind of shot, but would be cool to see. And I think I'm going to go first because I want to say Thanatos, the god of death.
He's the greatest.
Yes. Thanatos is not only a really funny villain, he's also got a very interesting power where he can transform into things, and I think that would make a really interesting moveset. He's also much higher up on the echelon of villains, unlike, say, Cerberus or Hydra, Thanatos actually comes back a few times.
Right.
Hades makes special mention that because he's the god of death, he can kind of, he's kind of like the second in command.
Also, the extra H is for amazing. So.
Yes, that is true.
He was also in the first Kid Icarus game. He was that stupid little snake. So yeah, he's a legacy villain.
Legacy character.
Yeah.
So he'd have an interesting moveset and all that. I feel like he's more likely to show up as an assist trophy.
Right.
But he's a character who I think we're probably going to see in multiple games because I think he's quite important to the Underworld army. He's like him, Medusa, and Hades, and Pandora.
I was about to say
the
the only other villain that I would put in that category of his is Pandora. I just think if you're going to put Pandora in, you just go to the stronger female villain and put
yeah, Medusa in instead.
Medusa, yeah.
So, what's your pick, or was it Pandora?
I don't know. I was considering Pandora. She's got a great design and could be pretty cool. I brought up, we were joking earlier, Orcos from Kid Icarus 2.
Myths and Monsters.
Yeah, I just think it'd be fun to get an actual Kid Icarus 2 rep in there because it's such a forgotten game. And also, he just looks like Kid Icarus the Devil, from Kid Icarus. On a more serious note, somebody that I could see getting at least a little bit of a following, I guess, would be Phosphora, because once like Magnus, she actually has an assist trophy.
Yeah.
And I feel like she has a cool design, is a fun character. I could see her getting a bigger role in another game. Like if there was ever a Kid Icarus game where you control multiple people, like multiple characters, I would not doubt that she'd be one of them.
Yeah. Well, before Dark Pit got in, you could argue that Pit is obviously the right hand of Palutena, Thanatos Pit is the right hand of Hades, and Phosphora would be the right hand of Faridi.
Right.
I mean, there's that entire mission where Thanatos and Phosphora and Pit will fight each other while flying through the air, and Phosphora ends up taking out Thanatos and then running away to the palace. I think it's the mission she's introduced in that.
Yeah, I mean, and she's a cool character, interesting character, a recurring character in the story of the game, not as much as some other characters. But, also she has cool lightning powers, so...
Yes, that's true. It's, I could say, I think she does have a fan following. It's just that, yeah, she's not one of the, I guess, leaders of any side. She's in the same category as Pit is, except she's not the main character because Pit is.
Yeah, exactly. And who we should actually bring up, and this is not as an editor's choice, but just as a classic Kid Icarus sort of thing, is the Eggplant Wizard. Yeah.
Yeah, I beat you to it. Yeah, no, I was debating bringing him up. I would love to see him as an assist trophy, and he turns people into eggplants.
Yeah, I think that's a better role for him, especially because in the older games, and then with the Captain N cartoon, they kind of made it like, kind of like how there's a bunch of Magic Koopas, but then there's Kamek. They kind of made him like, no, there's like the Eggplant Wizard. But in this game, they made him very clear that it's just,
a group of people. Yeah. or a race of villain enemies.
Right. It's like getting Moblin as a
Yeah, which is why I think assist trophy would work better. But I'd love to say it is one of my top assist trophies, just because I think it'd be funny to turn people into eggplants.
Yes, that would be the best.
Yes. So right, that does it for Kid Icarus Character Corner. Thank you for joining me, Spazzy.
All right, you're very welcome.
And right now on the screen will be 2 other series that I want you all to vote for on the comments below. I will tally up the votes later on in the week and then look for a co-star to come on and chat with me about that series and Super Smash Brothers. But until then, why don't you share this video amongst your friends, Kid Icarus communities, Smash communities, wherever you feel like visiting. Give it a like, give it a subscribe, and check out our website at www.source-gaming.com for more Kid Icarus, Smash, and all sorts of gaming news. So remember to always return to the source and take flight. Okay, we'll stop there.